dear listeners. It is Monday afternoon or Monday evening at some places in the world, or even other times. Welcome to Spiritism 101. Today we will be talking about the earth. So far we've had several weeks following the book called Spiritism 101 by Louis Hu, and we have been covering a lot of different subjects so far. We've been talking about God, the Spiritist principles, the three revelations, the Heightsville phenomena, the turning tables, Allan Kardec, spirit hierarchy, the peri-spirit. We also talked about spiritual influences, dreams, mediumship, mediums, psychography, and last week we talked about reincarnation. All these programs can be accessed on Facebook Live, on Facebook, on Kardec Radio, the page called Kardec Radio. And I believe they're also being archived on the Kardec Radio website and the app. So I recommend for those of you who are interested and would like to go back and listen to the other programs to do that. But today we're welcoming everyone who is here. There's Patricia, welcome. And as I said, today we will be talking about the earth. Now, the earth is a huge subject, as we know, and there is no way that we can cover the whole entire earth in all the aspects that come with it. But what we're doing, we're going to be leaning up against the book by Louis Hu, The Earth, and we'll be also pulling in the Spirits book for help, and On the Way to the Light by André Louise, psychographed by Chico Xavier. And that will give us a little bit more insight. Hello, Lisa. Lisa Tellers, welcome. So here we go. The Earth. Earth is a planet that serves as a dwelling for thousands of incarnate and discarnate, for thousands of years for incarnate and discarnate spirits. A team of superior spirits, coordinated by Jesus, is in charge of our world. The earth was formed a long time ago. A very good book that will tell us about the minutest details and how they evolved is Evolution in Two Worlds by André Louise, psychographed by Chico Xavier. It is not yet in English, but currently Vanessa Anzalone is doing a nightly study group on this particular book in the English language. It is incredible. That is the true masterpiece that will give us so much more clarity about the formation of the earth. If you don't want to go that much into detail, there's also the book Genesis by Allan Kardec, which is very informational and very educational as well. In the beginning of all was chaos. Jesus and the spiritual team gradually were placing the land, the air, and the water in their respective places. Now, when we go to the Spirits book, question number 17, we find that on page, let's see, we can get this here. We find that on page 89 in chapter 2, the general elements of the universe, a whole chapter that is dedicated to that. We will be just picking out a few of the questions, and if you'd like to get more information, this whole chapter is available to everyone. So question number 17, Allan Kardec is wondering, can humans know the origin of things? And the answer is no. On earth, God does not allow everything to be revealed to them. So God does not let us know everything, which is understandable since we are still very young in our evolution, even though we've existed for millennia. Question number 18. Will they, the humans, the people on earth, ever be able to grasp the mystery of things now hidden from them? So, will we ever understand it? And the spirits on high say the veil is lifted as they become more and more purified. But in order to understand certain things, they need faculties they do not yet have. So we will have to evolve further, both intellectually as well as morally, to be able to receive more information, more detailed information on the formation of the world, on the origin of all things. Now let us go to question 19. Can't humans grasp some of nature's secrets through scientific investigation? And the answer is science has been given to them for their advancement in all matters, but they cannot go beyond the limits set by God. So we need to remember we're always under the umbrella of God's wisdom. Question number 37. So we're going to jump over quite a few number of questions. Question number 37 is in chapter 3, and the chapter is called Creation. You can find it on page 97. And we're going to question 37. Was the universe created or has it existed from all eternity like God? Alan Kardec is now wondering. And the answer is obviously the universe did not create itself. And if it has existed from all eternity like God, then it could not be God's work. Reason tells us the universe could not have created itself. And since it would not possibly be the work of chance either, it must be the work of God. Everything is the work of God, including our planet. Question number 38. How did God create the universe? To borrow a well-known expression, by the divine will. So here we're learning that God created the universe by divine will. Nothing can better portray that all-powerful will than those grand words from Genesis. God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. Now we're jumping over to question 43. In the same chapter, chapter 3, subtitle is The Formation of Living Beings. Question number 43. When did living beings first appear on the earth? The answer is, in the beginning, all was chaos. The elements were all jumbled together. Little by little, each thing settled into its proper place. Then living beings appropriate for that state of the globe appeared. So it all started apparently with chaos, and then little by little, each thing settled into its proper place and developed further. And we've learned in the book Evolution into Worlds by Andre Louise that these things took millennia. It didn't happen overnight. Question number 44. Where did these living beings come from in order to appear on the earth? And the answer is, the earth already contained their prototypes, which had been waiting for the favorable moment in order to develop. The organic elements began to combine the moment the force that had kept them apart ceased, thereby forming the prototypes of all living beings. These prototypes then remained latent and inert, like a chrysalis or a seed, until the proper time for each species to appear. Then the beings of each species came together and reproduced. All these steps again will be explained in minutest details, and there are a lot of steps to get from A to B in the book Evolution of Into Worlds. Tremendous book. But here we're learning it takes time, and the transformation happens only under God's will. Question number 47. I'm just picking out a few, and There's a lot of information in these chapters in the Spirit's book. Question number 47. Was the human species among the organic elements on the terrestrial globe? So were we part of the organic elements? And the answer is yes. And it came forth at just the right time. This is the basis for the statement that humans were formed from the dust of the earth. So everything had its timing. Question number 48. Can we know the ages in which humans and other life forms first appeared on the earth? Do we know the time? And the answer from the high spirits on high is no. All of your calculations are purely speculative. I would venture to think or to say that probably there are times and they are known, but not to us yet. But I could be wrong. Let's go to question number 52. This is still part of chapter 3, and it is now in the subtitled chapter, The Peopling of the Earth. Question number, no, it's actually the diversity of human races. Question number 52. Where did the physical and moral differences that distinguish the Earth's various races come from? So how come we're so diverse, also in our moral development? And the answer is from climate, lifestyle, and custom. The same would happen if two siblings from the same mother were each raised differently and far apart. They would show no moral resemblance to each other. So we are, among other things, accustomed to different climates, to different parts in the world, and that has changed our evolution as well. Question number 53. Did humankind first appear at various points on the globe? And the answer is yes, but at different periods, which is another cause of human race diversity. So we weren't all developed, our souls were not all developed at the same moment. At different times and in different places is where we were developed, and that accounts for some of the differences in us. Later, humankind spread throughout the different climatic zones, and new types arose in the course of interbreeding between different races. Do these different races imply distinct species? Alan Kardec now asks. And the answer is certainly not. All are of the same family. Do the different varieties of the same fruit mean that they do not all belong to the same species? It's a good example. I think that makes it really clear. And now we move to question 54. Since the various human types have not all come from the same ancestor, mightn't they cease to regard one another as brothers and sisters? And the answer is all are brothers and sisters in God because they are animated by the same spirit and strive towards the same goal. You always want to take words literally. So let us remember that we are all brothers and sisters. We all have the same spirit and we strive towards the same goal. What is our goal? Our main goal is to become closer to God, to morally develop ourselves. But we do that with the help of our intelligence. And ideally, these two developments, the intellectual and the moral, go hand in hand. But most of the time, we're a little more or maybe a lot more intellectually developed compared to our moral development. So let us see, there are some friends who have joined. Let me see what they're saying. Yeah, there's Patricia, there's Lisa Tellis. Thank you for joining. There's Gabriel. I wonder if it is a mystery just to us humans, or there are some elevated spirits who know all about the earth creation. That's what I'm wondering too. And as I said earlier, I'm postulating that it's all known in the universe. It's just for us, it's not known yet. because we still have to grow further, both intellectually as well as morally, to be allowed to get all the answers. And then, hello, Marcia. Nice to see you. And Melissa. Welcome, welcome. So let us see. So we're going from question 54 to question 55, the plurality of worlds. Are all the globes spinning through space inhabited? Yes. And contrary to what Earth dwellers believe, they themselves are far from being first in intelligence, goodness, and perfection. So we need to be humble and recognize that we are not the first in intelligence, goodness, and perfection. I think for most of us that was clear. Nevertheless, there are individuals who think they know the whole truth of the matter and imagine that this little planet is the only one privileged enough to be inhabited by reasoning beings. Pride and vanity. They fancy that God has created the universe only for earth dwellers. That is not the case. Question 56. Is the physical composition of all the different globes the same? And the answer is no, they do not resemble one another at all. And why is that? It is because in our development, in our evolution, we need different, our physical form takes on different shapes, different density. Our perispirit changes. The perispirit, which is the connection between our spirit, our soul, and our physical form. The different ambience around the different planets, they're all different. And consequently, the physical forms on the different planets are different as well. It is all working in sync. So let us go for a moment back to Spiritism 101 by Louis Hu. Let's see what we learn here further. We already know, we just heard that there is many different planets in our universe and they are all developed. They're all inhabited. That's the right word. They're all inhabited. So here we read again, all worlds are inhabited by living beings, incarnates and discarnates. And let us not forget that we're not just us incarnates in our physical forms. We're surrounded by a vast array of spirits as well. And the different globes in the universe are not only inhabited by incarnates, but also by discarnates. So that is important for us to keep that in mind. To believe that there is only life on our planet, namely planet Earth, is to ignore the divine wisdom. That does not make sense at all. All worlds have a destiny. Let us go to Jesus in John. John 14, 1 and 2. Do not let your hearts be troubled, Jesus said. Trust in God. Also trust in me. In my Father's house are many rooms. If it were not so, I would have told you so. So we can see Jesus told us already and told his disciples and the people of his times that there are many rooms in his house. Now let us see what he meant by the saying. By the Father's house, he referred to the universe. So he said, in my Father's house, in my universe, are many rooms. By many rooms, what did he mean? He meant planets, many planets orbiting in space. Worlds of incarnate spirits according to their degree of advancement, and as we just heard, also discarnates that match up the evolvement and evolution of the incarnates on those different planets. So when Jesus said, in my Father's house are many rooms, he really said, in my universe are many planets. The different ambience that are attached to these different planets are the environment the incarnates live in, the thoughts they think, the mental fluid, that determines where they are dwelling actually, energetically dwelling. Then there is the sensations they feel and the perceptions they have. Those are the different ambience around the different planets, which are really a result of the moral and intellectual development of the incarnates that are inhabiting those different planets. So now we learned that Jesus already alluded to it in his allegorical way, and we took it apart and we see that it's exactly what the spirits told Allan Kardec. It's the same information that Jesus told us over 2000 years ago. In the Spirit's book, question number 55, and we had this question a minute ago, are all the globes spinning through space inhabited? And the answer again is yes. And all the different levels of evolution, um, let's say the levels of intelligence and goodness and perfection are different on the different planets. And planet Earth is one of the lower planets. There are actually five categories, approximately five categories of planet evolution. There is the primitive worlds, where evil is predominant. These worlds are intended for the first incarnations of the human souls. For example, like we could draw an example to the caveman mentality on planet Earth. So the lowest, the most primitive worlds are called the primitive worlds, a little bit similar to the cavemen. And then the second category is the worlds of trials and atonements. And these worlds are similar to planet Earth. This is where ignorance and pain still predominates, although intellect and technology are quite advanced. However, we're still lagging behind in our moral development. So this is the worlds of trials and atonements, of which Earth is a part. The third category, and we're going from the bottom up, is the regenerative worlds, where good and understanding predominate over ignorance. So we've heard through Spiritism quite a few times that planet Earth is on the cusp of switching from evoluting from a world of trial and atonement to a world of regeneration. So hopefully the shift will happen sooner than later. And of course, we know it depends on us. We are the shift. So the more we work on our inner transformation, the more we turn ourselves towards the good, the more charitable we become, the more indulgent, benevolent, and forgiving, the faster the whole planet will be able to transition. So now we have the fourth category, which is the happy worlds. These are orbs where ignorance is practically inexistent. People live for the good of society and seek progress together. A dream. And then the fifth world is the divine worlds, the habitation of purified spirits where the good reigns completely. So when can we actually leave a world? When can you and I leave planet Earth? Meaning, when when will we be able to graduate from planet Earth to a world that is higher, like a regenerative world? And the answer is it depends on our merit. When spirits reach the maximum degree of advancement, their world has to offer their pass on to a more elevated world. So, as I just said, it's our inner transformation, it's our work. There's also such a thing as demerit, when the spirit leaves to reincarnate in a more inferior world due to its persistence in evil, in ignorance. We know that the law of progress dictates that we always will develop further. There is ultimately no going back. But due to our inclinations, let's say we're inclined to do more evil, We can stall our development. And this is what's meant by the so called demerit. The law of progress dictates that as living beings progress morally, so the worlds in which they live progress materially. If we were to accompany a world during its different phases, from the first instant the atoms destined to its construction began to agglomerate, we would see it traveling along on a constantly progressive scale, although these steps would be imperceptible to each generation. And these are the words by Saint Augustine. So he's confirming that the worlds, our planet as well, has has developed intellectually and has developed morally. And yet we have to see that we have a long way to go to be allowed to incarnate in a happy world, or for this planet, hopefully this will actually happen sooner than later, to graduate into a regenerative world. So let us go back to Louis Hu, and we will now learn a little bit about a planet called Capella. Some of you might have heard about that, and some of you, for them, it may be new. There is a book by André Louis. It's called On the Way to the Light. Here it is. It was psychographed by Chico Xavier. This a book. This is a book by the Spirit Emmanuel, psychographed. I'm sorry, yeah, I made a mistake. I take that back. It wasn't by André Louis. It was by Emmanuel, psychographed by Chico Xavier. In it, Emmanuel briefly describes the history of humankind, the Earth's evolution, and also about the great civilizations of the past. He mentions in it the reincarnation of the exiled spirits of Capella. And this is what we will be looking at for a moment. So, this book tells us about the evolution of the world and the different people that were incarnated. It's a very interesting book. I highly recommend it. So, if we go, for those of you who have the book, you could join me on page 33. We're by no means going to read the whole book or the whole chapter or the different chapters. But again, I'm just picking out a few pieces for us to understand better what this was all about and what can be happening too. How peoples from other planets can incarnate as a whole group on a planet, and in this case, planet Earth. And despite the law of progress, they had to relearn a few lessons. So let us look into this. The Capella system. On the zodiacal charts that Earth's astronomers pore over in their studies, one may observe a large star called the Goat, or Capella. So Capella means the goat, in the constellation of Auriga the Charioteer, a magnificent sun amongst the stars closest to us. Capella too is accompanied by its family of worlds, singing the divine glories of the unlimited as it travels through the infinite. Based on the regular distance between Capella and our planet, its light takes about 42 years to reach the Earth, traveling at approximately 300,000 kilometers per second through space. Those are dimensions and numbers that are hard to imagine. In other words, Capella is far away from us. Nearly all the worlds dependent on Capella have already been purified, both physically and morally, in comparison with the backward moral state of planet Earth, where humans nourish themselves with the flesh of their less evolved brethren, just as they did in the prehistoric ages of their existence, and march against each other to the sound of war hymns, disregarding the simplest principles of fraternity and doing very little to rid themselves of their selfishness, vanity, and wretched pride. So these are the words of Emmanuel describing planet Earth, something that we do need to take to heart. Several million, many thousands of years ago, one of Capella's planets which resembled Earth in many ways, reached the culmination of one of its extraordinary evolutionary cycles. The final struggles of a long perfecting process were being finalized, just as is now happening with you regarding the anticipated transitions of the 20th century at this twilight of civilization. So here Emmanuel is referring to the transition that planet Earth is on the cusp of, from a planet of atonement to a planet of regeneration. And Capella at this time in history back then was at that cusp, at a transitional cusp. Several million rebellious spirits were living there on Capella on the pathway of general evolution, making it difficult to consolidate the hard-earned gains of those peoples full of compassion and virtue. However, an act of widespread cleansing would banish those rebellious spirits from that humanity that had aligned itself with perpetual harmony for the construction of its lofty endeavors. The Great Spirit communities thus decided to send those crime-hardened spirits here to planet Earth, where they would learn to accomplish great conquests of the soul through pain and the hard work of its environment, while at the same time giving impetus to the progress of their less evolved brothers and sisters. And he's referring to those less evolved brothers and sisters, which were already living on planet Earth. So these souls on the planet of Capella, who were not in harmony with the evolution that had happened on this planet towards turning themselves towards the good, had to leave Capella and were asked by the divine masters of the universe to incarnate on planet Earth. Thus, it was that Jesus received that horde of suffering and unhappy beings into the light of his kingdom of love and justice. With his wise and compassionate word, he exhorted those unfortunate souls from Capella to strengthen their consciences by fulfilling their duties of solidarity and love in the endeavor of self-regeneration. He showed them the huge fields of struggle that were developing on the earth, and he enveloped them in the blessed aura of his unlimited mercy and charity. He blessed their sanctifying tears and enabled them to sense the sacred victories of the future, promising them his daily collaboration and his advent to come. Yeah, I hope we're feeling the love that Jesus is always emanating towards us and available to us, but also in particular to these poor souls who did not follow the development that had happened on Capella. In spite of the fact that their hearts were hardened in the practice of evil, we're talking about those Capella people, those troubled and afflicted beings who were leaving a whole world of loved ones behind, were to be banished to the dark face of the earth. They would languish in the night of millennia of longing and sorrow. They would reincarnate in the midst of ignorant and primitive races and would remember the paradise they had lost in far-off skies. They would not see the gentle light of Capella again for many centuries, but would labor on the earth, cherished by Jesus and comforted in his immense compassion. I'm not reading it all, I'm just picking out some pieces that will help us understand why these souls came onto planet Earth and are actually linked to us. So here is a chapter on the origin of the white races. Those afflicted and tormented souls reincarnated proportionately in the most important regions of the earth where the primitive tribes and families were living. With their reincarnation on the Earth, the definite factors in the ethnological history of human beings were established. A major event had occurred on the planet in that, with these spirits from Capella, the, with these spirits, the ancestors of the white races appeared. So it was due to those souls from Capella that the white race actually started. So the Earth was originally not inhabited by the white race. Most of these souls settled in Asia, from where they crossed the Isthmus of Suez to the region of Egypt in Africa. But they also set out for far-off Atlantis, of which many regions of the Americas hold notable vestiges. A large percentage of those rebellious spirits, with many exceptions, were only able to return to their homeland of light and truth after many centuries of expiatory suffering. However, contrary to the general rule, the rest of those unfortunate and retrograde spirits are still on the earth even today because of their cruel of glamorous deaths. So some of these souls from Capella, they were banished from Capella and who incarnated on planet Earth, primarily in Asia and then moving through Africa, towards Africa and Egypt. Some of them were allowed to go back to Capella after hundreds of years of incarnations, but most of them are still here due to their attachment to not do the good, to do the evil, due to their ignorance. Over the course of time, those fallen and exiled beings came together in four large groups, just as they had during their past lives in the far-off world of Capella. These groups became part of the most ancient peoples, in keeping with the sentimental and linguistic affinities that had connected them in the constellation of the charioteer, which was the formation of the goat. United once again over time, they formed the Aryans, the civilization of Egypt, the people of Israel, and the castes of India. So again, the souls from Capella formed predominantly four groups, which were the Aryans, the Egyptians, the Israelites, and the people in India forming the castes. I don't know whether it's castes or castes. I'm sure you know it's the tier system of the people in India. From the Aryans descended most of the white peoples of the Indo-European family. In this lineage, one must include the Latins, the Celts, and Greeks, in addition to the Germans and Slavs. The four large groups of exiles formed the forerunners of the entire organization of future civilizations, introducing widespread benefits into the yellow and black races already in existence. So the dwellers on planet Earth were the so-called white and yellow races, and the souls from Capella introduced the so-called white races on planet Earth. Promises of the Christ. Having heard the word of the divine master before settling on the earth, the Adamic races, which is the souls from Capella, in their isolated groups kept the memory of the promises of the Christ, who in turn strengthened them amid the masses by periodically sending them his missionaries and messengers. Now, this is interesting because this will explain a lot. Hence, the epics of the Gospel were foreseen and sung about millennia before the coming of the sublime emissary, which was Jesus. The envoys of the Infinite spoke in millenary China of the heavenly figure of the Savior many centuries before the coming of the Christ. The initiates of Egypt anticipated him with their prophecies. In Persia, they idealized his trajectory, foreseeing his steps on the pathway of the future. Vedic India knew nearly the entire gospel story that the sun of future millennia would illuminate. in the harsh region of Palestine. And for many centuries, the people of Israel sang of his divine glory in the exaltation of love and resignation, piety and suffering through the word of the eminent prophets. A secret intuition illuminated the divinatory spirit of the common masses. So these are the examples. These were the four regions where the Capella spirits incarnated, and they already knew about Jesus. They were way ahead. We have to remember that. And the emissaries in these different groups already expressed and knew about the gospel, knew about Jesus before he even incarnated on planet Earth. Why? Because they had met him. They were coming from a planet that was way advanced of planet Earth. All peoples awaited him, Jesus, in their welcoming midst. All wished for him to materialize his sublime divinized expression on their pathways. However, in spite of appearing one day in the world in the shadow of the throne of Jesse, as the joy of all the downhearted and the providence of all the unfortunate, the Son of God in every circumstance would be the word of light and love of the beginning, whose genealogy is lost in the dust of the suns that travel the infinite. So most of us don't even know about this, but it is these thanks to these souls that we have this entire history in those different regions. Those regions that were way advanced, sometimes like in Egypt, even more advanced than we are today. And the same is true for Atlantis. And they all were formed by those souls in Capella, from Capella. It goes on in this book and is extremely fascinating. Great resource. So let us summarize here for a moment. So, who are the exiles of Capella again? They were rebellious spirits expelled from Capella that reincarnated on planet Earth. The black and yellow races lived already on the Earth, on planet Earth. The exiles of Capella form four other races. The Aryans, the civilization of Egypt, the people of Israel, and the castes of India. In Egypt, it was the Egyptians who have stood out in doing good. Some of them returned to Capella, some of those souls returned to Capella, but many remained with Jesus on earth. This just gives us a glimpse of why Egypt was so advanced. The Indo-European family, they have no religious feeling, as they bring from Capella an intimate revolt. Their greatest virtues lie in their fraternization with the savages of Europe. They are the basis of the white race. So the group that went to to the area called Europe were not in tune with Jesus. They were very rebellious. And then the people of Israel, they were the strongest, more homogeneous, and but also very proud race. They were also monotheists, so they only believed in one God. And Jesus chose them because of their faithfulness and need. So as we can see, that in this group of souls that were asked to reincarnate on planet Earth due to their attachment to ignorance, to do the evil, there were different groups, different consciousness levels, even in those groups. And in Egypt, they were doing so much more the good. They were already more advanced. In Europe, they were very rebellious. And we know that in Israel, they already believed only in one God. And that is part why Jesus chose to incarnate in Israel, also because they were very faithful and very God loving. And then in India, from the Hindus descend all Aryan peoples. Sanskrit is the language reminiscent from Capella. So I hope this gave us a little bit more information on the development and formation of the earth. I know it's not even close to the whole picture. These are just some highlights picked out, we're hoping that it might ignite your interest to go a little bit deeper. There's different resources. As we said, there is a lot more information in the Spirits book. There's by Alan Kardec. There's Genesis by Alan Kardec that is dedicated to the formation of the Earth, to all the different aspects of the development of planet Earth. And then there's this beautiful book by Emmanuel, psychographed by Chico Xavier, On the Way to the Light. And there is more. This is just 3 pieces of information. Thank you so much for joining us today. Next week, let us see, there will be, the next subject will be prayers. So we will meet again next week, same time, same place. Thank you so much for joining us. And thank you to Kardec Radio for allowing us to bring this information to you. Many blessings, big hugs. Take care. Bye-bye.